Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's training webinar. I'm Ferre here with Swenson. We do this every week here, every Wednesday at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. So excited to be here. We've got a lot of good things to talk about and review some online auctions. So kind of excited.
I don't know if we've got anybody here for the first time. We usually assume that most everybody has been here before. So if you have questions, if it is your first time, feel free to ask questions throughout the event. You can ask any time, and we love getting them. We think the more questions, the better. So feel free to do that at any point here tonight. Also, the webinars are always recorded, so if you miss one, it's not a big deal. You can always catch it, the replay afterwards. Now, in terms of what we wanted to talk about tonight, there's actually a number of different companies. We wanted to talk about online auctions tonight, and there are so many different online auction providers that we wanted to be able to jump through a lot of them quickly. On some, we might be able to switch off and do live demonstration during part of it, but we mostly want to make sure that everybody is familiar with who these companies are and that you are aware of how their sites basically function and operate, so that you know there are lots of different places that you can go to and use if you're interested in online auctions.
Yeah, and that's one thing that me and Shade have had the opportunity, being involved in tax sale investing for almost 20 years, to actually see this happen, to see kind of the online auctions start taking place, where you just had just a few counties, and now literally you know, many counties across the country are conducting their auctions online. And so because of it, there's a lot of different companies out there, there's a lot of different software, and really being a good tax sale investor, I think in the future, is going to be understanding how to participate in online auctions, because that's where at least a portion of the property tax sales are going to be taking place.
Yeah, in fact, I'm sure that at some point in the future they will all be online. As of right now, we're probably, I'm not sure what the percentages are. You know, there's probably still the majority of sales are probably still taking place as live auctions, but it's changing all the time.
Yeah, and especially in certain states where they've started implementing online auctions. For example, like Florida, where, you know, 80% of the counties are conducting their tax lien auctions online, and maybe 30% of, or 20%, 25% of the counties are doing tax deed auctions online. And so each month there's new counties that are starting to, for the first time, participate in an online auction versus doing it a live auction there at the county courthouse.
Yeah, there are a lot of advantages, and like Steve mentioned a second ago, online auctions really came about around the same time that online record searches and online record databases became available. And as a whole, they were a real game changer for tax sale investors. You know, prior to online auctions and online records, you had to travel to county records building to do any kind of research. You had to travel there in order to participate in the auction. Everything about what you did required you to travel there and be there in person. And so really what's happened is it's alleviated that requirement. Now we can do things from out of state. We can invest from anywhere as long as you've got, you know, access to the internet. And this may have increased the competition at some of the online auctions a bit, but it's not to a point where there aren't still great deals to be had at the different online auctions that take place.
Yeah, I mean, the way of the simplicity of investing today is completely different than it was 15 or 20 years ago. And so, you know, actually being a tax sale investor is so much easier than it was even 10 or 20 years ago. You know, just like Shay brought up the fact of online records, all this information that we're able to pull without going down to the county courthouse, without going through Rolodexes and you know, finding all of these different records, we're able to do all that online. And so it's a big game changer, and it really has been for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, oftentimes there's different opportunities that maybe you can remember from your past where you didn't act fast enough, or maybe you didn't, you know, maybe you had a chance to invest in something years ago and you didn't, and it turned out to be really good. Well, tax sale investing right now, even though Steve and I started with this close to 20 years ago, there's never been a better time than right now to get started. It's one of those things that's getting better and better. It's getting easier and easier with time. So I think it speaks well to the future of tax sale investing and where things are headed. I think it's going to continually get easier and better. You know, maybe we'll get a chance to look at past sales, because that's one of the things that we do sometimes as we're looking at different online auctions. We'll look at past sales results to try to get an idea of where to invest. But there are many aspects of online auctions out there. There's a lot of different companies that do it. There's different ways that it's done. You've got third-party companies that do it, and you've also got counties that conduct their own auctions. So the main point for counties is that it opens up the number of potential buyers for them by holding it online. You know, they were limited before by the number of people that would show up at the sale, but with online auctions, it's much easier for them to reach a broad group of people and to have that many more people participating in their tax sales, which is more profitable for them, and it's also easier. I think it saves them a lot of time doing it online versus trying to hold everything in person.
Yeah, and moving to online auctions actually saves the county quite a bit of money, especially when you're talking about huge tax lien auctions or things like that, where there's some of those tax lien auctions in person would go 3 to 5 days, because they just had so many tax liens to get through in places like Phoenix, Arizona, or places in Florida, places like that. And so the ability to do it online saves the county money, and it also gives us as an investor, what the big positive for us is that it gives us the chance to invest all across the country without ever leaving our home.
Yeah, which is a major advantage for real estate investors. It's also something that didn't really exist for real estate investors 20 years ago. So it's a new, really it's new investment in many ways. Sometimes we call it the new foreclosure opportunity because it's essentially what it is. It's a foreclosure opportunity that you didn't have access to 15 years ago without a lot of travel, and that most people didn't really understand. So, you know, there are a few facts here that we'll talk about real quick before we dive into these different companies. First off, a lot of the companies out there, a lot of the auctions will include pre-auction downloads that contain all of the instructions, procedures for participants. Really important to make sure you download these in the beginning and you read through all of them. It's going to include everything you need to know about submitting bids, getting registered, paying for the property, and anything else you're going to want to know prior to participating.
Yeah, and this is important information. This is the type of information that is just as important in many ways as the properties that we're actually going to be bidding on, because the county may have certain rules, they may have things that we don't know about, and that's where we're going to get that information, is through those download packets. And so, they're going to have instructions and tutorials to explain not only how to use the online auction, but also any type of rules that the state might have. So that's going to be incredibly important information. In fact, some counties even actually have practice auctions. And so what these practice auctions allow you to do is to practice before the auction. So you get a chance to participate in a mock auction and kind of go through the process of submitting bids, using the software, and understanding the system. If you've ever purchased anything off of Amazon or eBay or something like that, you're going to be able to go through the process and understand it. Most of these companies have set this up so this is very user-friendly, as user-friendly as they can, because there's going to be so many different users on it. That's part of their business. And so all of these different tools that are available is something we're going to want to pay attention to as investors.
Yeah. Now, we've mentioned the online auction companies, and some of the main online auction companies that we'll talk about are the bigger online auction companies are Bid for Assets, Real Auction, the Grant Street Group, SRI Auctions, and Civic Source, to name a few here. Well, there's a few others that we'll talk about as we get further into the webinar. But let's talk about a couple of these first. Beginning with the one that if anybody here is familiar with online auctions, the first one you most likely be familiar with are Real Auction, because I think they handle all of the auctions, or at least a good chunk of the auctions, in Florida right now, and they're also picking up other counties. Really, they do a lot. I guess this kind of explains a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing about Real Auction is they have several different states that are their clients. So they're going to be handling the tax deed auctions in Florida. In fact, they handle a majority of them. Grant Street Group has a few counties as well, but most of your online tax deed auctions in Florida are going to be done through Real Auction. They also have tax lien auctions in Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Illinois, Nebraska, and they have a ton of New Jersey tax lien auctions. And so as far as tax lien auctions, you can see all of those different states, and those are going to be some of the top tax lien investing markets that we're going to want to participate in anyway, that are all available through realauction.com.
And in a minute, we may jump over and look at some of the examples. I wanted to get into some of the other companies, though, because we've looked at Real Auction more often, and we've looked at some of the other companies less. And so we want to cover all of these here. But we'll see if we can get a chance to dip into Real Auctions and what they have right now. We'll also see if we can show you where their practice auctions and things like that are at for the additional online tax lien sales they do too.
Yeah, and the one thing that's nice, we're going to be going through all of these different companies, but the one thing that's nice is you being a member of Tax Sale Support, you're going to have all of these links available on the website. So regardless of what company we're talking about, if they have an online auction, we're going to have that information on the website along with the practice auctions as well. So if you go to, let's say you want to participate in the Colorado auctions, you can go to Tax Sale Support, see what Colorado auctions are taking place, and then also click on the link to do the practice auction.
Yeah, the same is true with Real Auction. When it comes to the over-the-counter tax liens that they offer there, you can buy them directly off of the websites, and they make it relatively easy to do. Basically, what they do is they hold the tax sale, and anything that's left over after that point is available in the same way it is with the online auction. It's just a matter of going through their list and picking which liens you want and contacting the county and make payment arrangements.
Yeah, and they're going to offer over-the-counter tax liens in a number of Florida counties, Arizona, sometimes some Colorado counties as well. And so, especially right after the auction takes place, that's a great time to go online, in Florida, or coming up in February after the Arizona auction. That's the best time to take advantage of some of these over-the-counter tax liens.
Let me jump back there. Just something to take note of with some of these companies, especially with Real Auction, is that in states like Florida, where they're holding the tax deed sales, they're also conducting the mortgage foreclosure sales. And so it's important when you're looking at the auctions within Real Auction to make sure that you're looking at tax deed foreclosures and not mortgage foreclosures. But it's usually pretty easy to tell the difference because mortgage foreclosures are about 20 times the price of your tax deed foreclosures. That's where you'll see, that's closer to the market value of homes, or even higher in some cases.
Yeah, and it'll be color coordinated as well. So if you go to one of these counties that has both foreclosures and tax deed sales, like Charlotte County there, the foreclosures are going to be listed in blue, and the tax deeds are going to be listed in yellow, and it says tax deed. And so you're able to see what auctions are taking place on what day.
Yeah, in fact, we can jump off here for a second if we want. We can also look at let's jump off for just a moment here, and we'll go and take a look at actually we'll just go directly there. His name, or you just want to go to
go to the website.
Let's see here.
So, essentially what we'll be able to do is look at upcoming auctions in Florida that are taking place through tax deeds. We can also take a look at the upcoming auctions in New Jersey and Colorado that have tax lien certificates.
And then just a second here.
Now, one thing that's nice about these online auctions as well is they allow us to use debit or credit cards to purchase the properties. And so, that makes it a lot easier. That gives us more flexibility, where we can just pay for it using an account or cards that we already have set up.
Okay, let me switch this over here. Okay, so as an example here, if we want to look and see how some of these are set up here, we can go to List Center. We're going to go into the online auction section here. And if we wanted to look at any of these, let's say we want to look at some of the online auction stuff for real auction. We know that they hold a lot of the stuff for the Florida tax deeds, so these are actually going to link us directly to those sales. If we're looking at any of the ones here in Florida.
Yeah, and one thing to note about the Florida tax deed auctions is a lot of these are going to be held monthly. In fact, some of the counties are going to have, they could have 3 or 4 auctions in just 1 month. And so, what that does give us the ability to do is continue investing within the same area, because we know there's going to be new properties. And that's really what makes it nice when we're looking at price. When we've competed in some of these Florida online tax deed auctions, we may have been on 4 or 5, 6 properties before we even win one. So, we've been on several properties, but what's nice is it gives us the ability to, if we didn't win one, to go ahead and purchase properties the next month.
Yeah. Now, what we pulled up here are just a couple of these sites, and I wanted to pull up this one because it shows you just basically the way that their tax deeds and their foreclosures are listed. So you can see here that they have foreclosures being sold on every day of the month almost, as far as regular weekdays. But you can see that they've got the color coordination here is different on these yellow ones. And on those dates, they're selling both foreclosures, regular bank foreclosures and tax deeds. So whenever we're looking at one of these lists, we generally have to work through the standard foreclosures first before we'll get to the actual tax deeds. So in this case, we can see at the top here where it has listed foreclosure, which tells us what we're looking at bank foreclosures instead of tax deeds. But that will change as soon as we get into the tax deeds, which begin right here.
Yeah, exactly. So, if it is one of the counties that has both foreclosures and tax deed auctions, the tax deeds are always going to be listed after the foreclosures. So they're going to sell the mortgage foreclosures first, then they're going to offer the tax deed properties. Some counties will just sell only tax deeds, and some counties, like this county, will sell foreclosure mortgage deeds and also tax deeds on the same auction.
Yeah, you can also see just the difference in the amounts. The mortgage foreclosures are always going to be above market value in most cases. That's why the people are upside down in their property and they can't sell it. So that's not unusual for them to be upside down.
Well, and you can look at all of these where they're way upside down. 400,000 versus 144,000, 277,000 versus 97. This is why, me and Shade have always stayed away from mortgage foreclosures and really stuck with tax foreclosures, just because of that difference and the fact that we're able to start the bidding at usually around 10%, 15% of market value, if not lower.
Yeah. Yeah, the bank foreclosures really just can't hold a candle to the real foreclosure that tax deeds are able to offer. Plus, you get all the advantages of that foreclosure wiping out anything attached to the property. It's a huge advantage, which you don't get with your standard bank foreclosures.
Now, the next company is bidforassets.com, and Bid4Assets doesn't really sell tax lien certificates. They primarily just sell real estate, so we're talking about tax deeds here. And so they're going to handle tax deed auctions primarily for California. They handle most of the California auctions. Grant Street Group has 1 or 2, but Bid4Assets handles most of them. Also auctions in Washington, Idaho, some different states like that where they're just essentially just selling the property. And so it's going to be, similar to eBay, where you're just bidding up the price at this type of auction.
Yeah, we've got a really good question here regarding over-the-counter tax deeds. And what the member's wondering here, you're saying, want to know if I buy over-the-counter tax deeds in Florida, would I be able to own the property outright without waiting for a redemption period? And would I get the deed right away after I contact the county to pay the over-the-counter tax deed? And it's a really good question because Florida is a little bit confusing in how they do things. Florida offers both tax liens and tax deeds. So the first part of the answer is if you wanted to buy a tax deed in Florida, you can buy a tax deed without having to wait for any kind of a redemption period. That's true of the tax deeds that are offered in Florida and of the over-the-counter tax deeds, that are offered. Neither one of those will have a redemption period attached to them. But the way that they handle liens is a little bit different. So Florida sells both tax liens and tax deeds. They sell tax liens with a 2-year redemption period, and they pay out a maximum interest rate return of 18% annually. What's mainly different about Florida is in most tax deed states, at the end of that redemption period, so if it came to an end, 2-year period came to an end, normally the lien holder would have the power to foreclose on the property and would receive the property for their investment, essentially. In Florida, what's different about it is that after that 2-year time period passes and the lien holder decides they want to initiate foreclosure, they'll fill out a form with the county, which basically gives the county the go-ahead to prepare that property for their tax deed sale. So what they'll do is they'll sell the property at an upcoming auction, online auction, through their deed sale, and they'll use the proceeds from that to pay off the lien holders that would exist on the property. So if you're a lien holder that buys a tax lien in Florida, you may not get the property at all. In fact, you've got a really high chance of just getting the interest rate return. But if it's property that you're after and you start with a tax deed or with an over-the-counter tax deed, you won't have any kind of a redemption period to wait out. You basically just make the payment arrangements, and then the county will ship you the deed.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation.
Yeah, so they offer the both there, but you can definitely buy over-the-counter deeds in Florida without having to worry about any kind of redemption period. They're basically the ones that were offered at the auction and didn't get a bid, and the lien holder didn't want to, basically pay anything additional to foreclose on it.
Yeah, and I think a general rule when it comes to over-the-counter tax deeds is that you're not going to have any type of redemption period. So, when we're talking about tax deeds, essentially you're buying the property. When you finish purchasing it, you're going to receive a deed, you're going to become the owner, the property's going to get transferred in your name. Of course, with liens, that's a little bit different, where we're just buying a certificate on the property.
Yeah, now, we were talking about bid for assets before then, and doing the same thing. We can probably just jump over if we want and show everybody that real quickly before we skip back here. We can just go directly there to show everybody real quick what we're talking about.
And as I mentioned before, bid for assets is primarily tax deed investing. So they're not selling a lot of tax lien certificates. They've sold them in the past, but usually 90% of these are 95% of them are all going to be tax deed auctions.
Yeah. And so we'll always start over here on the left under county tax sale. That's where how they keep them set up, and we can see some of the dates here on the right-hand side for upcoming sales. So some of these have already passed here. But as we get into November, we can see we've got Benton County, Washington coming up. We've got Pierce County, and that one I think is a different type of sale. AT, I wonder what, it's probably for a specific type of property. Take a look at it. Oh, there it is down there. Okay. And maybe it's like the assessor treasurer is offering. So maybe the AT must stand for assessor treasurer. I don't know what separates these.
They have, in Washington, sometimes we'll have two different types of sales. So I think this is tax title sales probably.
Yeah, we can see though we've got 127 of them that are available, and it's like the lowest bid is about 2,300.
So when we're talking about attending or participating in one of these Pierce County auctions, we're essentially buying the property. And what we'll usually do is we'll, of course, scroll down and you'll see the contact information. You can see the deposit information. That's going to be important. A lot of these auctions are going to have deposits. In addition, looks like there's a video as well that will explain, you know, kind of how the deposits work and how to go about it.
Now we've got our electronic list down here at the bottom, and then we've got our list downloads right here under you know, PDF and Excel versions of it.
Yeah, we also have our county terms of sale as well as that's something we would go through and read before participating in the auction as well.
Now, one of the questions on the site, have all of the over-the-counter liens and deeds on the site had due diligence done on them? And the answer to that is no. In fact, the lists that we provide on the site, we essentially provide them in the same format, the same way that they're provided to us. So what we do is we go directly to the sources, like different counties, to get their lists directly from them. But they'll produce their lists just according to the properties that are available, and that's basically the way that we'll download it. So there hasn't been any due diligence performed on them before that point. You know, when you're downloading a list and just looking at a standard list. Now, that being said, I guess it would depend on what you were looking to invest in, whether tax liens or tax deeds. But the amount of due diligence that's required to do on them would be different between the two. But no, you're not going to look at anything that has due diligence done beforehand except for our secondary properties.
Yeah, and when we're looking at over-the-counter list, I mean, we literally have hundreds of over-the-counter lists with hundreds of thousands of tax liens available and hundreds of thousands of tax deeds available. So, you know, we probably have about 30, 35 different states with over-the-counter list, and we're getting those lists directly from the county, like Shade said. So these are essentially the full list of properties that are available, you know, from the county.
I hope that helps here. But please, we keep the questions coming. I think they're really good. You know, this is just an example of how some of the information that we pull from the Bid for Assets site. It's relatively easy, I think. A site that's less familiar to people is Grant Street Group.
Yeah, but Grant Street Group still has, you know, really a ton of different counties and states that they offer tax sales for. They're very similar in a lot of ways to Real Auction. They kind of compete for the same states and counties, and so they're going to have auctions in Florida, Arizona, Maryland, and then they also have tax deed auctions in Florida and California as well. Yeah.
In fact, you see here just some of the different places that they represent.
In fact, just a couple of months ago, me and Shade competed in Grant Street Group auction for some property in California.
Yeah, and like Steve mentioned earlier, we bid on a lot of properties because it's the only way that you're going to win, and also just to keep in mind that you want to pick these properties up for a low price. So there's no point in overpaying for properties when you're dealing with tax sales. The primary benefit of buying it through a tax sale is to get it for a cheap price. And so if you overpay for it, you've really kind of destroyed that whole point. You're buying these things wholesale. And so, you know, you want to go into it keeping that in mind and knowing what your exit strategy is beforehand. You know, if you're buying it wholesale, you need to have an idea of how you plan to get out of the property. In other words, are you going to sell it wholesale, or are you going to try to sell it for market value with using a warranty deed instead of a quitclaim deed? You know, are you going to go through the quiet title process or not? A lot of things there to consider, you know, as you're looking at some of these properties.
And Grant Street Group, like Real Auction, is going to have its own website for each county. So for each county that they have as one of their clients, they're going to have their own website that's completely custom to that particular county. And you can see all of the different, they're going to have the documentation. It's very simple to register. In fact, you know, that's something that we would encourage all of you to do after you get off the webinar tonight, is to go and register for these different auction websites. It doesn't cost any money. Pull up a Word doc, put in your username, you know, save all your username and passwords and information, and go ahead and register for each one of these so that you can go ahead and see the full features. A lot of times you can't see everything that may be available until you register. So it doesn't cost anything, quick to do.
Yeah, and there are, Yeah, I think it's a good idea to start keeping track of all your username and passwords here with the sites, because you're going to sign up on a lot of different sites.
You know, one thing that's also kind of sweet about Grant Street Groups is it gives you the ability to search by certain criteria. So you can search tax liens between, you know, $100 and $500, or however you like to do that. And also, like Real Auction, they also offer their over-the-counters online. So there's over a dozen different counties in that will offer their over-the-counter tax liens directly online, like Real Auction.
You know, and like Steve mentioned before, you don't actually need to go to any of the sites normally, because you can access everything through through tax sale support. But why don't we take a second? We'll just we'll show you the sites here quickly, and so that everybody can kind of see here what we're talking about here with the sites. And essentially, this is their home site here. You know, their main page here, and really, you can tell what they're selling here. Ultimately, is software. You know, it's a software seller here. They use for tax collection auctions and e-payment here. And what they're doing here is they want to sell different county officials on using this system here. In fact, I'm sure they've got a sales group that works just specifically trying to get different counties to agree to do this, and so this is kind of like their main site, and then they've got individual sites for each one of the counties that they represent.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. These companies do more than just auctions. They'll do the tax collections. They do several other things besides just doing the auctions. In fact, when you go to foreclose on a property, a lot of times you'll do the deed application either through the Grant Street Group or Real Auction. They have a system in connection with the county to be able to do that. And so these companies provide a lot of additional things in addition to the county auctions, but the county auctions is really what we're going to be using. Yeah.
And we'll see Grant Street Group a lot, I think, as we go through the site. SRI Auctions is another one that that is out there that doesn't get used quite as much. You know, Zeus. I've always thought this site was a little bit weird.
Yeah, and they've just kind of recently upgraded it to this new Zeus platform, which they're going to have tax lien auctions, tax deed auctions. You know, really for Louisiana, Florida, Indiana, Colorado, and Iowa, and so. You know, they're going to have different types of tax lien auctions and also tax deed auctions through Indiana as well. So they've actually, several counties in Colorado will use this Zeus system, and in Florida. So, you know, right now you could go ahead and register and participate through this with some of the Colorado auctions that are coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one where you have to register to really see anything. And so, you know, they basically have to register for it to almost to get on the site, so don't hesitate to register on that one.
Now, FloridaTaxSales.com, the tax sale portal, this is a site that's kind of a cheaper version of Real Auction or Grant Street Group. Their software that does tax lien auctions for a number of different counties within Florida. And so they're just primarily will only do Florida. They do just the tax lien sales, and each website, similar to Real Auction, each county will have its own website similar to Real Auction and Grant Street.
Yeah, and you can see they've got a list here of the participating counties that use the tax sale portal here. You know, you've got Bay, Bradford, DeSoto, Gulf, Hamilton, Hardy, Holmes, Jackson, Okeechobee, Wakulla, and Madison. So several of the Florida counties here use it, and between tax sale portal and Real Auction and
Grant Street Group,
they pretty much cover all of Florida.
Well, and Zeus.
Oh yeah.
There's actually four different providers for tax lien auction systems for Florida. So it'll actually be all four of them that we've talked about.
Oh, nice.
And you can see each one will have its own page, very similar to Grant Street Group. It's kind of more of a copy of the Grant Street Group system than it is even of Real Auction.
Let's take a look at it here real quick. We're just going to go to actually, maybe they don't have the home site part anymore.
Maybe with the sales.
Oh. Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Let's see here.
Was that they were using that system as of this last auction?
Let's switch over here to Civic Source because that's actually one that's used quite a bit too. Yeah, Civic Source is one that we're seeing more and more often, and they are also an auction that does both tax liens and tax deeds. They primarily focus on Louisiana, Mississippi, and Missouri up to this point, but they've got handy websites, and depending on what you want, they're another provider here. Let's see what other information.
Well, and that's one thing that they've added is the Mississippi and the Missouri auctions. Those weren't available as of last year, and so just this year they've added these Mississippi and Missouri auctions, which in the past, none of those, either of those states were available through an online auction. And so that's something that they've added to just this year. And so I imagine that they're going to continue adding as many different states and counties as they can get.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of times it's helpful to know what areas these auctions function in and work in, because depending on where you want to invest, you may need to use them. If it's New York that you're looking at, they have primarily 2 sources they use in New York for their auctions. In fact, there might even be 3. I'm thinking about it, but NYSauctionsbid.com is one of them, and the HairOffLiveBids.com is another one. Actually, it might be worth going to take a look at the NYS auctions real quick.
Yeah, and I actually believe that both of these different companies are owned by the same group, essentially.
Let's try NYSauctions.com. There we go. All right, so the way they have this set up, this site is pretty well dedicated just to the to tax foreclosures, really. And so they've got the sales listed here. We can see that they're coming up on a busy time of the year here where they've got a lot of sales taking place. This is one that took place here today, the first one, and this one is for November 2nd, tomorrow. And then the next up that we've got on the 15th for Franklin County. What's nice about the sites here and how they do it is they'll oftentimes put more information on it. So you can look at, you can view the auction or the catalog. And what we can see here is, another thing that's nice about it is that they separate the properties into the types of properties they are. So you can see that in this they've got 5 commercial vacant, they've got manufactured housing 14, no category, there's 26 of those, residential vacant we've got 25, and we've got 28 single family homes.
And 28 single family homes essentially available. Most of these in New York are going to start around 10% of the market values. So
yeah, we can see what some of them are right here. If we wanted to just see what the single family homes were, we could click on that, and this will show us just the single family homes that are listed here for the auction, and some of them look great. Let's take a look.
One thing that's nice about it as well is they're going to show pictures, and one thing I want to add in addition to that is if you're within this area, they actually have open houses on a lot of these different properties, and so they'll schedule an open house that you can actually go through and look at the property, which is really rare in tax sale investing. So some of these properties have been foreclosed on and opened up, and you can actually see the inside. Also, one thing that's nice is they include pictures. You know, these are going to be current photos of the property to help us get a better idea if we are investing out of state.
Yeah, you can actually see the the tax foreclosure sign right here, up in front of the property right now. See, these are all pictures that were taken specifically for this sale, and you can see this one sitting on a little bit bigger lot.
Yeah, almost 2 acres. A nice nice home. We could, if we were interested in it, of course, we could do some additional due diligence and.
Just have this. Yeah, I like these types of auctions just because of the way that they have the property set up. You can see it's just more current. They put more thought and effort into the actual sale and the properties that are being offered. Whereas most counties just throw the properties on the auction block, but you don't get a lot of this current information.
Yeah, if you're within the New York area, going down and looking at some of these properties and attending the open houses in person could definitely be beneficial.
Yeah, and you can see that the bid increments, I'm not sure what they'll start the bidding at here.
Yeah, they usually will post that, but it's, from what I've seen, it's around 5 to 10%.
Yeah, and you can also see what the full market value is. Any of these sales would be great ones to participate in, I think. And let's switch over here again. And let's take a look here. Michigan is a state that has a couple of different places. There are some states in the country that have a ton of over-the-counter properties to purchase, and some of those would be Michigan's got a lot, Arkansas's got a lot, Mississippi's got a lot of over-the-counter, and there are 2 primary sites that we use in Michigan. The first one being tax-sale.info, and what this is this is the site they have set up to sell their public lands. There's a second site that they have set up as well that is the I think it's called Fast Track, right? Fast Track Michigan Land Bank.
Yeah, and that one's just for over-the-counter properties, but it gives the ability to sell over-the-counter properties in addition to Michigan tax sales or taxsale.info. They sell over-the-counters as well. But taxsale.info will handle about 80% of the tax deed auctions taking place in Michigan. So between they actually just wrapped them up. So between the beginning of summer until about now, they hold all of their tax deed auctions. In fact, tomorrow is their last sale. And one thing that's kind of cool about taxsale.info is after all the auction has taken place, the properties that don't sell are all put onto a new sale and then resold starting with a $100 opening bid.
Yeah, which that's as close to a land giveaway as you can get when counties are willing to forgive the debt that's owed on the property. There's a huge opportunity there for investors. Steve and I love those types of properties because essentially what happens is properties that don't sell obviously have this delinquent debt that just keeps accruing, just keeps adding up. And if it goes for very long, if it goes for 5 years, 10 years, that amount can get so high to where the properties are just not appealing to investors. That's what happens when you see properties that are valued at $10,000 that have $15,000 owed in delinquent taxes and fees, where the numbers just don't make any sense. Well, when the county gets desperate enough, they realize that they just need a new property owner owning the property to start paying property taxes, because it's been a long time since they've collected property taxes on any of those types of properties. And so the counties that are smart about it will forgive that debt that's owed, and they will set up those properties with the minimum bid, like $50 or $100 minimum bid on all of them. And for the investor, it makes for great opportunity, because you can buy properties that are worth whatever amount, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, that open up at $100.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's just a smart thing for counties to do. Even we were talking about Florida over-the-counter tax deeds, and there's good tax deeds there, but there's also, tax deeds that have been on the books for so long that they've accrued so many back taxes that the property is never going to be profitable to buy. And so they're sitting on these properties that would be good if you could pick it up for 10 cents on the dollar or 15 cents on the dollar, but because of the back taxes, maybe it's 50 or 60 or 70 cents of what the property value is, it takes away that incentive.
Yeah, absolutely. What I clicked on here, so you've got two different options when you go on to taxsale.info. You can either look at their upcoming auctions, like Steve mentioned, they just holding their last sale, or you can click on the surplus properties here. And you could also click, if you wanted to, by map, and look at it by map, which is a handy way if you're trying to keep your investments within a certain geographical area. Or if that's how you want to search out your investments, you can do it by map. If you don't want to do it by map, you can also search through just their surplus properties, which you can do by county. So what we're looking at right here are some of the counties that they have surplus for, and we could look at any of these if we wanted. This county's only got two, fairly small county here.
Well, one thing we could look at as well is the upcoming auction tomorrow, just to get an idea. Now, one thing as well is the properties that may not sell tomorrow will probably be put over the over-the-counter list, either through this site or through the land bank.
So let's take a look here.
Can you click on the online no reserve and pull in?
I think it'll pull it up here. I think it'll. A little bit slow, but I think it's still going to work.
If not, we could click on the individual counties themselves. You can see how many different counties are essentially, selling property. You can see quite a large list of them. And there's single-family homes. There's commercial properties. We've seen there's a gas station for sale. I mean, there's just a ton of different properties. And one thing that's nice as well is that they've taken photos for a lot of these ones.
Yeah, and it doesn't take very long at all to start going through the list when they've got pictures like this set up, so you can see, like this property right here. Property right here is a gas station that they've got listed for sale. They've got the SEV here, which is a type of assessed value. I think it's about 50% of the market value on the property. But yeah, you can see we've got a whole bunch of pictures here on each one of the properties that they've got available. So we can see this older beat-up gas station here. Take a look here. They've got. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these end up on the over-the-counter list here next week. Or I guess, how long do they wait? Do you know how long they wait?
I'm not quite sure how long before they put them on the list.
Sometimes counties will have a time period they'll wait like 4 weeks before they'll add properties from their sale to their over-the-counter list. But it may not be that long. I know Mississippi waited. Remember they made us wait for 4 weeks. Yeah, it is a nicer way to invest, and you can see that the minimum bids on a lot of these properties are all going to be pretty low. Yeah, they've also got bundles here, which this is like a bundled section.
I think it has like a ton of properties in it.
Yeah.
One of them did. One of those bundles had like 25 properties in it.
Yeah, they do bundle some of them.
Essentially what they're trying to do is they're just trying to get new property owners in these properties, new people paying the property taxes, taking care of them. And so, when you're talking about a $100 opening bid, it's just, and we have properties that could be valued anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000 on this possible list. It just makes, there's nothing like that available anywhere.
Yeah.
There's no way where you're going to be able to buy a large lot close to a lake for $100.
Yeah, a lot of beautiful property up there. And since we've got a second here, let's take a look at the let's go take a look at the Fast Track Authority here. It'll only take a second. And I don't remember the actual website name, so what I usually do to find it is just type in Google Michigan Fast Track Land Bank Authority. and it's on the Michigan.gov website. It's michigan.gov/land bank. And I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And now if you click here, this is what it looks like when you first go to, if you click to view all properties, then it changes the look here and it pulls up a map feature you can see here. And essentially what it does is it has all the dots color coded. So you can see what properties are just by their by how they're color coded, and you can basically decide what it is you want to look at. So if we wanted to zoom in here, we could take a look and see some of the properties here, the property types. See, we've got a big cluster of properties here in the residential vacant and some residential improved, a couple of things mixed in. But if we wanted to, we could click on one of these properties and we can get some of the details here. Although in some of these they'll have more details in terms of a picture, sometimes not though. And what we may need to do is search for additional information on top of what we can get here.
Yeah, in most of these properties, we're going to have to take that parcel number and search it on the county record. So that they'll have some basic information. Sometimes they have photos, things like that from when they initially sold the property. But you know, we're going to want to always go directly to the county website. So you know, the Fast Track Authority, or some of them aren't going to have direct links. A lot of them will have direct links to the county records. Some of them won't. And if they don't, then we're just going to research those through the county records.
And what we mean by that is that property we're looking at just barely. I don't know how Wayne County, how they do it. And I might type in parcel search or property search. So I'll type in Wayne County, Michigan parcel search, and that will generally, if there's a service available, you know, to pull up online records, then we'll be able to find it under a term like that. And so this is what we're looking for here. Although I wonder, this will give us the option here. I think it would give us the option here. Let's see. Let's switch that up. Where do we change up that?
We may have to try to pull up the county record and then from there get the map if we can't.
You can see all the different layers here in maps. You know, by the way, maps are something you want to play around with and really become familiar with because they're so handy here. We've got a lot of different layers on the map that we could add there. Parcel boundaries, more layers here. Now, jump over here to the next one. So why don't we take a look? I'm actually kind of interested in some of the bid for assets stuff. If we wanted to take
One thing I quickly want to show as well is just some of the Colorado, New Jersey online tax lien auctions, just to get an idea of it real quick.
And so what I did is I went back to the list center here, and I'm going to go back to the online auctions page, which is going to pull up this page right here for us. And this is where we decide, you know, whether we're looking for online tax liens, online tax deeds, or, you know, redemption deeds. So we would click on online tax liens here.
So what we can do is we can see the different Colorado auctions that are coming up. Let's just go ahead and click on Mesa. So here you can see the Real Auction website. You know, they're going to have a website that's completely dedicated to the auction. Up here on the left, you'll see the bidding rules, the results, the tax information. But if we just want to see the properties that are for sale, we can just click on Preview Items for Sale. And then from there, Real Auction is just going to pull up a list of all the tax lien certificates. You can see that there's just over 1,000 tax liens. So, you know, this isn't a huge county. There's not a huge amount of liens, but there is plenty of liens available. One thing as well is that these auction websites are going to have links directly to the county records. And so what we usually do is we'll search by price, just because it seems to be the easiest way to be able to do that, to kind of zero in on tax liens that we might be interested in.
Yeah, so if we were looking, you would just click on any of them?
Yeah, we'll just click on this.
Yeah, let's just take a look here at what one of these are. So it's a tax lien for about $2,700. If we wanted to see exactly what it is. Interesting.
Home.
It says it's in a retirement or nursing community.
I wonder if that just means it's an over 50.
Yeah, it could be like an over 50 community. You know, that could certainly be it. And we can see the value information on the property right here. You know, so we can see the land value, actual improvements. I mean, an improvement value on the property, it's a home, and the improvement value on it is between $450,000 and $520,000.
Well, I guess it could be some type of nursing, like a home nursing home.
Yeah, it could be a multi. The value's definitely there.
Yeah, the value is quite high.
Yeah.
You can see it sold in 1995 for $207,000.
Yeah, which is we're looking at right there. There we go. Make that just a little bit bigger here. And they've got some images here of the property too. You can kind of see it. It is like a multi-unit, isn't it?
It's got a 1.6. It's over an acre large.
Oh, that's an old picture.
There's sketches down below as well.
2 buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is multi-unit, 9+. And, you know, this type of information right here is pretty handy because we can learn so much about the property here. This is basically part of the assessor's records that tell us everything about. It was built in 1976. It has 30 rooms, 10 bedrooms, you know, 4-bedroom, 4-bath,
yeah, it's probably a 10-plex, most likely. You know, if we want to do some additional information, we can look up the property address. But you know, when you're looking at $2,000 or $2,500, you know, backed against a $500,000 property, you know, it's really pretty easy investment to make.
Yeah, I mean, the $3,000 amount on the lien is well, the property looks like it's worth about $600,000 at least. You know, probably more like $700,000. And so that $3,000 tax lien is definitely within the range of a bid to value ratio that's okay for liens. You know, with liens, we're generally looking for a lien to be a couple percent of what the property's estimated to be worth, maybe. You know, you don't want to see liens that are up a crazy amount, but what you're really asking yourself, though, is how secure is my $3,000 investment here to purchase this lien? And the answer is, well, it's secured by $700,000 worth of real estate, so it's highly secure. You know, it's very secure. Somebody's not likely to let that go to foreclosure, and if you could somehow foreclose on the property, you would make a ton of money on it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a secure investment. So if you could get that investment at the right interest rate, then it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, and you know, I like the way that their property records are put together here. They're pretty nice and handy. This one right here, we've got a home that's also sitting on a bigger chunk of property here, on a couple acres.
It's got a total value of $446,000. You know, we see the land value is $104,000. The improvement value is about $300,000.
Yeah, and it sold last in '96 for $247,000 with a warranty deed.
Yeah, looks like it was probably transferred something within the family, or I would imagine with the zero.
Oh yeah, in 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was still done with the warranty deed as well.
Yeah, it was probably some type of family sale or.
It's kind of a neat looking property. It's kind of an older style.
Is there more than one picture? Oh, that's old.
Yeah, that is an old picture here of it.
You know, it's nice when they have the building sketches available as well, so you can see the outline of the property or the structure, the size of the structure. You know, all of this information can be real helpful, especially in trying to determine, let's say that we did acquire this property, it was a deed. Well, then we'd want to see, you know, we'd need that information to determine what would be the rehab cost or any of that kind of information. So all this county information can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Perfect. Now let's see here. And pretty much gives us out of time here. But there are so many interesting things that we could look at. All of these liens, though, if we were looking to invest in these liens, I would feel pretty comfortable investing in either of the ones we've seen so far. You know, sight unseen, because that's how most tax lien investing works. You know, tax liens are created to redeem. That's what happens the vast majority of the time, and that's exactly what the investor is going for most of the time. Is they want that high interest rate return on a safe investment, but they don't necessarily want to try to buy property. If it's property you're after, we turn you to tax deeds, which are properties that have already been foreclosed on.
Yeah, and I would bet that all of these tax liens down to the lower dollar liens, at least a good portion of them, are probably on pretty good properties.
Yeah.
You know, it's generally the way it's going to work, especially in a state like Colorado. And so, you know, even if, let's say worst case scenario, you know, the properties that we're looking at, the house burned down or whatever, you're still looking at 150, 200 grand in just that land value. And that's really something that's not going to happen in anyway.
Yeah, you know, when you look at these, it makes sense. You know, the first properties we were looking at were $3,000 liens, and we dropped that amount in half down to where we're at about $1,500 in liens, and the property value drops about in half to where we're looking at properties that are worth about $250,000 now. It's one of the nice things about the tax system and the way that it works here. You know, we can see
It's a newer home.
yeah, it's a newer home. You know, this one's valued at about $343,000 for that $1,500 lien. You know, it would be a very secure investment. You see, they pay about $1,500 a year in property taxes that we can see right here.
So, a photo?
Yeah, and I think they do have a photo here, a couple of photos here of it. This one's from September 15th of 2016. You can see it's a nice home there. Another picture here of the home. These would all be great investments here at that amount. And Colorado, they pay out
11% this year.
Yeah, 11%. So what is it? It's 9% over prime.
Yeah.
So really, an easy way to earn, you know, an easy way to earn a double-digit return on your money with these liens. Very easy. In fact, probably the easiest investment. You basically pick these things out and buy them, and they redeem automatically.
Yeah, and one thing that is nice about Colorado is that the foreclosures are actually done through the county. So, you know, you're going to fill out an application, pay a fee, and the county's going to do the foreclosure, but you get to keep the property. So, you know, unlike Florida where it goes to a tax deed sale, in Colorado, of course, you're going to get a little bit lower interest rate, but at the same time, if it does go to foreclosure, then you're going to acquire the property. In fact, every single month we're able to see tax and certificates that have gone through the foreclosure process and essentially have now been issued to the lien holder.
Yeah, there are some nice tax liens that get foreclosed on in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen some
A
great homes.
couple good examples a few weeks ago or a few months ago in some videos on some really nice homes that were picked up for 7-8 grand, worth 250, 300 grand.
Yeah, so I think that is a good avenue to look down with tax liens. Well, I think that about does it here for us time-wise here tonight. We appreciate everybody joining us, though. We will be sure to get this recording up so that you can watch the replay here of it if anybody wants to do that. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You know, we're always happy to answer questions here for people if you need help with anything. So. Once again, thanks again for joining us, and we'll plan on seeing everybody soon.
Have a great week.